profit maximizing moment. Happy New Year. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and a Happy New Year, and back to work. Everything is back to work. Today we're going to talk about the new, everybody's heard it, I've gotten a ton of questions on it. I'm still trying to get answers myself on the new PPP loans that were passed over the holidays. I wish they would have passed it a little bit earlier, because I was doing tax planning during November and December. Saved my clients well over $1 million this year, all legally. And I had to do both with the PPP loan being taxable and without it being taxable. And of course, they fixed that. We'll get into that a little bit more. So let's talk. There's another round of PPP loans, and that's a misnomer. I want you to think about it this way. The word loan scares people. They're like, I don't want another loan. I don't need more liabilities. I want you to change that. Think of the PPP as tax-free money. Who doesn't want tax-free money? So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is something that you really need to be on top of. So, it does come in the form of a loan, okay? And you have to jump through some hoops, and there's some things you need to do. And I talked to a banker today. The SBA has not put out the new information, the new form, or any guidance yet. So it's still a little preliminary. All right, so let's talk. There's different rules on this one. I'm going to go over it pretty fast. To qualify for the second PPP loan, you need to have 300 or fewer employees, have suffered a 25% or greater loss in revenue from any quarter of 2020 when compared to the same quarter in 2019. And if you already had a PPP loan, you need to have used the money or expect to use the money. All right. It'd be a good idea. I'm going to be concentrating on the rest of this week and all the next week of getting the PPP loans from version 1.0, get the forgiven packages in before I start applying for new ones, okay? How much can you get? Let's back up a second, all right? That 25%, you know, when I was talking to the banker today, he says the SBA, the guidance they're getting so far, if it's under $150,000, you'll have to provide proof you were under 25% at the time you ask for forgiveness. If it's above $150,000, the loan request, you have to do it with the loan request. Well, I'm going to basically tell you, I've already told the bank and my clients that I'm not going to submit a loan request without having proof that they qualify. And I think that's an excellent, you really ought to follow that. I mean, you don't want to, first of all, have to pay it back, even though it is an excellent interest rate. But I mean, still, you don't want to have to pay it back. Secondly, you don't want to have any possibility of fraud, okay? So make sure you do your homework, all right? There's some weird things in here. The loans are capped at $2 million. That's not weird. If you're a hotel or a restaurant, that means you have the NAICS code, what the heck does that stand for? North American Industry Classification System, code of 72. You can identify your average monthly payroll for either 2019 or a trailing 12 months and multiply it by 2.5 to find your loan amount. So if you're not a hotel or a restaurant, it's 2.5 months worth of salary. Now let's talk about that. If you haven't filed your W-2s and your W-3s, the bank's probably going to give you grief and ask you to use the 2019 ones, so you get the same loan you did back in that time period. If your payroll's gone up for some reason, you might want to use 2020, which means push hard to get your W-2s and W-3s done so that we can use that amount. All right. In truth, that's another problem. If you can find a quarter where you drop by 25%, next thing you need to do is see whether you're better off using 2019 or what they call the trailing 12 months, which would be 2020. I don't know why they didn't say that. The 2020 time period, and see which one works better. But I would expect, and I would want you, if my clients, I'm going to kind of force them to get me the W-2s, at least the W-3 and all the 941s. It's the same kind of information we had to send in originally. Now, in some cases, you know, COVID forced you to lower your payroll, in which case you want to use 19. Again, get with somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. Now, if you're a hotel or restaurant, here's a change. You get to borrow 3.5 times your payroll, 3.5 months worth of payroll. That's pretty slick, all right? So you're going to have to make up your mind which one to do. Now, to be honest about it, you're not going to be able to get the loan yet. The SBA has not, as of this morning, had not released the new form, the application form, and had not, as of yet, issued guidance. In other words, instructions. We're keeping an eye on it. We expect it pretty soon. What can you use the money for? Well, payroll. Obviously, 60% has to be used in payroll. You have, again, the same 8 weeks or 24-week time period from the origination date to use it. You can also, though, use it for other items. 60% has to be used for payroll, but you can also use it for rent, interest on mortgage obligations, utilities, operations, expenditures. We don't know what that means. That's new. Property damage. I guess if you were in one of the peaceful protests out in some of the cities that got hit this summer, I guess that's what they mean. So I guess it would be floods too. I don't know what that means. We're going to have to wait and see. Supplier cost, what's that mean? Worker protection, PPEs and things like that. So there's a lot more things added here. At the end of the day, though, you're borrowing 2.5 or 3.5 months worth of payroll, and you got 8 weeks or 24 weeks to pay it back. What I've been doing with my loan forgiveness is electing the 24-week time period and using it 100% just for payroll. And what that does, those are getting approved almost automatically. So I would probably do the same thing and ignore all the crazy rules about all these other things and just use it for payroll. Now, if you don't use it all for payroll, then you need to look at these kind of things. Now, big change. And this is what I was talking about. I wish they would have done it a month earlier. One of the things that had happened is in the original law it said if you get the loan and you get it forgiven, it's not income. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. The problem is when they wrote the law, they did not, they did it too fast and they didn't do a very good job. The IRS already had a law and a regulation that said if you use non-taxable income, I'm going to briefly put it, if you use non-taxable income to pay deductible expenses, you couldn't deduct the expenses, which for all practical purposes made them taxable. So if you got a $100,000 loan and used it for payroll, that was $100,000 worth of payroll you could not deduct. That's what I was talking about. I wish they would have passed this earlier, because I did tax planning, I had to assume it was going to be taxable. They snuck into this that said now these are deductible, so the expenses are deductible. Now, it's on a first-come, first-served basis, so you really need to kind of go fast, though I just told you the SBA isn't ready. You should try to go to your own bank if at all possible, but to be honest about it, if your bank isn't, hopefully they're more up to speed. I think this is the third, they said second, but it's really the third funding tranche. It's a little bit different. Everybody's kind of saying it's the second wave of PPP, but we really had one in April, and then we had one until June, I think it was, and the ending date was August 31st. So, you got some time, but get ready. I would say what you have to do is push your W-2s, get your W-3s done, get your year-end payrolls, and get with somebody that knows what they're doing so they can decide which pay period we're going to use and whether you even qualify. All right, but move pretty quickly. I need to see. I apologize for having to read, but this stuff is relatively new, so I don't want to make a mistake. Now, one thing that changed: if you had gotten an EIDL loan, emergency and economic injury disaster loan, I knew I could get that out somehow. If you had gotten up to $10,000, you had to use that. You could not get that forgiven. So if you got a $100,000 loan, you got $10,000 because you got $1,000 per employee, and you had 10 or more employees. You could only get $90,000 forgiven. You had to repay the 10. That has been changed and eliminated. It no longer needs to be repaid. So if you did pay back the bank or the SBA, you'll get a refund. At least that's what it says. There's a couple other things I wanted to not forget. I think that was all I wanted from this article. Let me get this one. Okay. If you did not qualify or for whatever reason did not get a PPP loan originally, so this will be the first time you go try to get a PPP loan, There's 35 billion that was set aside specifically for first-time PPP applicants, with 15 billion of that made for loans for first-time applicants with less than 10 employees. So they were trying to make sure if you were smaller and you didn't get the first one, that there was money there for you, that you didn't have to worry as much about this big rush to get money before it ran out. So the new deadline, by the way, has been extended. Sorry about that, my watch is going crazy. Till March 31st, 2021. So you have till that date to get an application in. In truth, I mean, there's a lot of money here, and it's because it's limited to 300 employees or less. I don't think you're going to have as many large ones that ate up the first group so fast. I think it'll last a little bit of time, but really what you need to do, find somebody who's going to help you with the application. If you're not comfortable doing it yourself, get your payroll returns in there. Make some decisions on whether you're going to use 19 or 20. First of all, whether you had a 25% drop. If you're a restaurant, bar, hotel, and there's a lot of others that have just been shut down so much, you definitely qualify. But even some people that didn't think they'd qualify. If you remember back in March and April of last year, when the shutdown orders first started hitting, there was a lot of uncertainty and business really got affected. So I got a couple clients who would not have thought it would qualify, but they were able to qualify because back in that time period the courts were closed or something happened that made it almost that they did have a 25% decrease, at least in the second quarter, and that's all you need. All right. That's about it. I don't want to get too crazy with this, but next week there was also a lot of tax changes that were put into this bill. So next Thursday we'll get into that. I mean, I think this is long enough. Look, again, my name is Wayne Belisle. I didn't do a good job introducing myself. If you're watching this, I assume you've signed up for my group, so you know it, but I'm probably going to post this in a few other places. If you have any questions whatsoever, reach out to me. You can get me Facebook Messenger, or you can LinkedIn, put it there. Another way, just hit me an email, Wayne at wjb-cpa.com, Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E, at W-J as in John, B as in boy, dash the subtraction key, CPA.com. That'll work. You can also call my office, 915-857-8158, leave a message. I'm brutal about time management, and I'm still pretty swamped trying to get these PPP loans forgiven and get the new ones going. So don't be afraid to, if you leave a message, I don't answer right away. I check my emails a couple times a day. That's it, usually in the morning and in the afternoon. So if for some reason you don't get an answer right away, send me a second one. Just say, hey, second request. That'll get my attention that I messed up somewhere. Hey, until next time, this is Wayne Belisle saying, let's make 2021 our most profitable year ever. Thank you very much.